The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and help me welcome Dan McGuire. Dan, a representative before, and they're going to be a representative again.
We hope.
Yeah, we know it. People know you. After your little entrepreneurship in between, how are you doing? How you wanted to go back into something like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on the show, Carol. I was... for the people who just saw last week's show with my wife, Carol, she's been in 7 terms.
Right.
And the first time we ran together. She won, I lost, right?
Oh.
And because she had, I don't know if it was 50 or 100 votes more than me, something like that. But she was so good that I couldn't lose after that. You know, I just coasted on her coattails. And so I did 3 terms and kind of got tired of it. And because, as you know, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, 90% of what you work on turns to nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's in some sense, it's a good thing, right? Because dealing with the law, you want to get it right. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to just change the law on nothing, right? So there's so many stages where a law can fail, right? Mm-hmm. And so you know, you start at the beginning of the year with close to 1,000 bills. Maybe by the end, 100, 150 would pass.
Right.
And most of them are not in their original form anyways, right? So anyway, so it got frustrating, and I was out of it for 6 years. But, you know,
you miss it a little.
I miss it a little, and, you know, the bad memories fade, and you know, and stuff like that. So I give it another try.
Good,
so
good.
See.
Well, what committee were you on before?
I was on finance, so that's dealing with the state budget.
Right.
Right. And so I wouldn't go back to any other committee. I mean, I did that, and that's my main motivation, actually, is the finance committee in the House has lost a couple of very senior people. And so they're going to need help next budget, in my opinion. I mean, you know, this past budget cycle, so we do a 2-year budget in the first year, and it was pretty easy because due to COVID, the federal government just showered the states with money. I mean, it was like, you know, Scrooge McDuck or something kind of thing, right? I mean, they had a lot of money. And so, but I think next time this is all going to go away, and we got inflation, right?
Right.
So it's going to be tough. This is not going to be an easy budget. And so the fact that the House committee has lost some senior people, I tend to think they need somebody with some experience, right? So that's
good.
my, you know, that's at least part of my motivation.
I remember the budgets have been very good when you were there. So let's hope they stay good.
Yeah, thank you.
What do you think to be the biggest problem there, other than money?
Yeah, I mean, it's just money, right? I mean, you know, the New Hampshire is fortunate because we've been in this kind of virtuous cycle where we cut taxes that attracts business from out of state, right? So the businesses do good, that brings in more money, right? So we've been in this cycle where we cut taxes a little bit, but we get more money,
which is nice. But you haven't been able to explain that to the Democrats yet.
Well, we gotta. I mean, we assume that trends are it's gonna still be a Republican legislature. I mean, you know, all the indications look that way. I mean, you can't take things for granted, but yeah. So we hope to kind of continue that a little bit. I think that we're going to have to consolidate to some extent. You know, my feeling is what we should do with extra money, should we be fortunate enough to have it, is pay back debt a little quicker, right? I'm particularly disappointed that we have such a high pension debt, in the billions,
Sure.
right? And they put in a plan to pay that back over 30 years, all right? And we're maybe halfway through it or whatever we are, partway through it. But really what that debt represents is that in the past, people had more government than they paid for, right? I mean, they should have been paying this pensions all along, and we
Right.
shouldn't have any debt.
That's right.
But so what we're paying back today is government that existed 20 years ago, right? Or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And that's not right to extend that another 15 years,
That's right.
I mean, we have to, because then you're separating. You're saying, well, children and grandchildren should be paying for
us.
what we spend. That doesn't make sense. So we should cut that back. And money that we put into the pension system today, it's invested, and so it can grow, and it really cuts the slope, in the future. I mean, so if we could bring back those 30 years down to 25 years or 20 years even, that would
Gradually,
be great.
yeah.
So.
Get that running in that way, and then maybe you'll be able to get to the federal government. Because they're even worse on that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
The person I'm supporting for U.S. Senate is Chuck Morse. Okay, and he's the current Senate president,
Right.
New Hampshire Senate president. He's a longtime member of the Finance Committee in the Senate, and so there's nobody in the state who knows government finance better than him, has a better big picture of the whole thing, and especially the interaction between what the feds send us and what we spend on and all that sort of stuff. So if there's anybody who's going to get the feds to spend less, I think Chuck Morse is the right person for that job. As much as I like some of the other candidates, I think experience counts, right?
Definitely.
When you get into these things. And it's just like hiring anybody to do a job. The first thing you ask them is, well, what'd you do?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Did you do anything like what you want to do?
What you want to do. And if somebody said, well, I was on a school board, now I want to be a U.S. Senator, right? But Chuck can say, I ran the state Senate for 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like
that's something else.
Yeah. So anyways. Yeah. So I think on the budget, I mean, there are definitely things we spend too much on.
Right.
And I think you might have mentioned one when you were talking to Carol, that's higher education. Right? To me, the amount we spend on the university system is sort of the least justified part of the budget. Right? I mean, a lot of people think of the state government as kind of a super charity, right? We spend a lot of money on people, on children, on elderly, on sick people, disabled people, that sort of thing, right? Well, the people in the university have none of those characteristics, right? We're talking about young people in the prime of life, who are going to be highly educated, get good jobs, and all that sort of stuff. They're not really in need of government charity, right? So I think spending on universities is the wrong way to go. I mean, as I understand it, something like 3/4 of the population of New Hampshire does not have a university degree, right? And so you're asking people who themselves don't have a college degree to pay for somebody else's college degree, right? I mean, that doesn't seem right, does it? Because they're the ones going to get the benefit of it, right? So, anyway, so that to me is an area ripe for improvement.
I see.
And there are other things that we spend on. I think we spend way too much on the war on drugs. We have so much spending on prisons, on prosecutors, on cops, and all that stuff that, in my mind, should be spending on doctors, and spending on counselors and that kind of thing. It's been going on for 50 years with the same horrible results.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have any fewer addicts today than we did. We might have more. Right. Yeah. And all these people today who are taking fentanyl. Yeah. Right. They're taking fentanyl because of the war on drugs. Yeah. Right. I mean, if they went to the drugstore, they wouldn't order fentanyl. No. Right?
I would hope not.
Yeah. So, that's another area that needs a lot of improvement. And it's something I worked on a bit when I was in previously. An area called asset forfeiture. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not. What is that?
So this is kind of a detail, but basically, if the police arrest somebody, they can kind of seize things that they think are related to the crime. You know what I mean? Yeah. Typical example, they bust in somebody's house who's selling drugs, and there's $10,000 on the table. Yeah. So they take the $10,000 and say, well, that's drug money, right? Yeah. And what happens to the $10,000 is it gets forfeited, right? And there's like a separate case against the money versus against the drug dealer.
Oh, really?
The drug dealer has to be charged criminally, right? So they have to find evidence against the drug dealer to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and then they can send him to prison, right? But the money, they only have to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that it was drug money. So it's a much lighter thing. The case against the money, the drug dealer, the state provides an attorney, right? Well, the money, there's no attorney. The guy who owns it would have to come up with his own attorney. Yeah. So the value of the attorney might be higher than the value of the money. So he doesn't even bother to defend himself, right? And so that's called asset forfeiture. And what happens to the money is it gets split up among law enforcement agencies. So law enforcement agencies use this money to further their budgets, right? Off budget, essentially, right? And for example, Nashua, at least, one good thing about Nashua, they are very open about what they spend. So you can go onto the website of the city of Nashua and look into their drug forfeiture fund, and they say, oh, we're spending on extra police cars or equipment or whatever. And one of the things in the past, when I looked at it 10 years ago, they had an apartment in like Litchfield or Manchester or something where their undercover cop was doing drug deals, right? So that's kind of what they use some of this money for, right? Anyways, so that's one of my interests is kind of reforming this system of making sure that when you charge somebody with, you can't take somebody's assets like their cars. That's another thing they usually do is take cars, unless you convict them of a crime, right? You convict them of drug dealing, great. Then you can say, well, this was part of the crime. But if you they often just let the person go.
Oh, really?
But they keep the money.
That's a sneaky way again.
That kind of stuff. So there's things that go on that just
so
aren't,
you want to make
right.
it. You want to change the rules a little bit.
Yes, and so what we did that last time I was in, we made it so under so here's another problem. There's both New Hampshire law and federal law. Yeah. Okay. So when you're a drug dealer, you're breaking both. Right. Right. And so the police arrest you. They can take you to the Hillsborough County prosecutor, or they can take you to the federal prosecutor. Right. Okay. Well, it turns out that if they can interest the federal prosecutor will split the money 85 to you, Mr. Policeman, and 20 to them. Okay, 80-20, right? Whereas the New Hampshire prosecutor, you get 45 and the state gets 55 or something like that, right? So So the police would rather interest the
Yeah.
federal prosecutor in the crime, right? So we fixed the New Hampshire side, right? So the New Hampshire side, we said, you have to be guilty of the crime, and then we keep the money, okay? But the federal side is still bad,
I
right?
say you can't change that.
And so the main limiting factor is when these things are so small. So a lot of these cases, there's $1,000 in cash, there's an old car, there's a, it's not much, right? And so the federal prosecutor says, don't bother me with these little stuff, right? And so they're not interested. So some of the little cases go under New Hampshire law, right?
See.
And they're handled appropriately.
Yeah, just the big ones. Huh?
But the bigger case, at some point, the cases get big. So one thing we've been trying lately, and I don't know the status, I don't think it's gone through, is to say, look, in almost every case, unless the FBI is involved, then you can go to the feds, right? But if everybody in the room works in New Hampshire, then use New Hampshire law, right? It really, anyways. So that's.
So you're going to set some rules there that really define it beforehand. You don't have you don't have a trade-off there.
Yeah, but these things are hard. They're hard to change that kind of law because the committees, and maybe somewhat appropriately so, they're on the side of the police and law enforcement. And when law enforcement tells them we got to do X, they want to help them out and stuff like that. And so, we try to make the logical argument that, there has to be a balance and you have to do things right. And, there's right and wrong when you're talking about criminal law. So anyway.
So you're anxious to get back into that part. Huh?
I have some interest, but yeah.
A lot of things more than what you just said that go through that finance committee.
Oh, sure. Yes. Well, finance has their fingers in every single pot, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting how finance works because the budget is, so first of all, the finance committee is a little bigger than the other committees, right? Typically, the finance committee has 25 members when other committees have only 20. But also, the budget is so big. If you were to print it, it's like this, right? And so it's divided into three parts.
Right.
Okay. One part is Health and Human Services.
Right.
Okay. Which is, I don't know what it is, $3 billion a year or something. I mean, it's some very large amount of money.
It's 40-some% of the budget, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe. Well, it's more than a third. Yeah. So I think you're right. And I don't remember the exact number anymore, but anyway, so Health and Human Services, 1/3 of the committee deals with that, okay? Then you have certain parts of the budget that are big chunks. Education, right? All the money, there's a large amount of money comes from the state to the school districts, right? So that's one part, the Department of Education. Transportation, Department of Transportation, roads, and also Department of Safety, state cops, right? That's another big chunk, all right? The lottery is kind of a biggish chunk. And those three things are put together, and that's another third of the committee deals with those things, right? And then there's the last third of the committee, which deals with all the little stuff, right? So the biggest part they have is prisons, corrections, right? But they have the judiciary, they have DES, I think, and just all the other Department of Administrative Services, all the other little stuff, okay? Cultural affairs,
business development too.
Right, travel and tourism, business development, all those kind of things. Yeah. So, anyways.
So you're running basically with your experience, and you're going to have a district that's different than the one from your wife.
Yes.
Explain that a little bit.
So this is kind of interesting. So we just had every 10 years we redistrict, right? And so in Merrimack County, our town is on a border, is on the edge of Merrimack County. So the way it can be combined is somewhat limited, right? Because we can't be with Northwood because they're in another county. And the redistricting of the House is like 10 little problems.
Yeah.
Right? The first thing they do is they say, okay, Hillsborough County, you're going to get so many reps.
Right.
Merrimack County, you're going to get 45 reps, right?
Yeah.
Rockingham County gets 100 reps or whatever it is, right? And so then you have a problem of how do you district Merrimack County, right? In our case. And so you kind of start in one corner and work your way around, sort of. And what they ended up doing was previously our town was combined with the town to the north, which is Pittsfield. Epsom and Pittsfield was one block, because each one is big enough for like 1 1/3 reps. Okay. Well, so what happens is you get a base district for your 1 reps.
Yeah.
And then you have what they call a floterial district that takes a third here, a third here, and a third here.
Okay.
Now you got another rep for that. And so Carroll, so what had happened was Epsom and Pittsfield was one district, Allenstown was one district, and then all three together was one district, and that was Carroll.
Okay.
So I was in the Epsom Pittsfield.
Okay.
Carroll was in the Epsom Pittsfield Allenstown. All right. Well, that changed around because this town grew a little bit and that one shrunk a little bit, or, relatively
little change.
speaking.
Yeah.
So the numbers don't work out quite as much anymore. So Epsom now is going to be a 1 rep all by itself. Okay. And that was the district I'm running in.
Okay.
And then, but because Epsom is big enough for 1 1/3, okay, well, now we got to combine. So we take a little here and a little there and a little there. And so Carroll's district grew tremendously. So it's now Epsom, Allenstown, Hooksett, and Dunbarton. Okay, so that's a big corner kind of the county. And it's 2 reps in that district.
I see.
Okay. So hopefully Carroll can be one of the 2, right? But both of us have both primaries and general election, right? So I'm running in the primary against the incumbent, okay, and Carroll's running in a 3-for-2 situation, right? So there's 2 reps in her big district. But there are 3 people running. So we'll see.
So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I always say elections in New Hampshire are win-win.
Yeah.
Right? You either win or you don't have to do the work, right?
I see. And you're going back for a second time. Okay.
Yeah. We'll see.
That's
but, if I lose, that's not bad either, right?
Got other things in life too.
There's other things to do.
It's been keeping you busy. Your business, your entrepreneurial side.
Yeah, that's true. I have worked a little bit more on that over the past 6 years. So, but both in politics too. So I'm on a number of different boards of political organizations. So maybe I should give a plug for for those.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So I'm on the board of the oldest taxpayer organization in the state, which is called Granite State Taxpayers.
Right.
So you can go to granitestatetaxpayers.org. But what we try to do is push the state to keep spending under control, right, and keep taxes low. We do pretty good compared to other states, right? Better than Massachusetts, better than, et cetera.
Definitely.
Right?
I'm staying away from Massachusetts.
But, we could do better, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's like, and for example, I mean, because they had so much money this last time, the legislature voted themselves a $35 million parking garage. Okay. Well, the current parking garage is in bad shape. Little chunks of concrete are falling off.
That was when I was there 4 years ago.
But rather than, tear it down and rebuild it, which you could probably do for half that amount of money, okay, they said, why don't we build a new one, twice as big, over here. And so they picked a perfectly good building that the state owns near the State House.
Yeah.
Okay. and where the Attorney General currently has his offices, right? And they're going to tear that building down, build a beautiful gold-plated parking garage, right? $35 million, and move the Attorney General somewhere else, right? Well, now you got to pay rent for the Attorney General. You got to pay moving fees. You got to tear down this building that's perfectly good, right? So, and because it's the current parking garage is like behind a bunch of other buildings, so it can look like steel and concrete and nobody cares. Yeah. Well, the new parking garage is going to be next to the State House. So it's got to look nice. It's got to have granite, right? And all that. That's why, so stuff like that. They're doing stuff that's too expensive. It's not like us, and we got to improve that. Yeah. So I was the only person who testified against this parking garage, okay? All the other people say, oh, we need parking.
Yeah, it's like, but you don't need that. Oh, but the parking that... well, you only get that for the representatives, or what?
Well, no, it's mainly for staff, right?
For staff.
Come on. The representatives are there 6 months of the year,
right?
3 days a week, 2 days a week. Who parks in this parking garage? Staff, right? Okay. So,
well, the one, the parking garage that I went into, well, you always worried about that as you entered it.
Yeah, it looks a little shaky.
Yeah.
Physically, it
was all right. Yeah, I assume they did the testing that they needed to. Well, Dan, we're running out of time.
Yeah, so, it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much for coming on board. And if you have something to talk about on the Finance Committee, you're welcome. Just let us know, and we'll have you down here to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, if I do get on the Finance Committee, certainly talking about the budget would be interesting, in January or February, whenever we do.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Much.
It's a pleasure. All right.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.